From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. You can follow the Politics Hour today at our live video stream at our website, kojoshow.org. Of course, when we have our first guest, Attorney General Karl Racine, you can start calling 800-433-8850. Heck, if you have questions for him, you can start calling right now or send email to kojo@wmu.org. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom Sherwood, welcome.
Hello. And can I just state for the record that I love America?
Why?
In case Julie...
Just in case Rudy Giuliani happens to be listening to this broadcast.
I would like to let him know I do love America.
Do you love the weather that we've been having this week? Why is it such a big story that we had maybe 3 or 4 inches of snow and temperatures are falling and schools are closing and reopening and people are complaining about anything they can possibly find to complain about?
It's always stunning every February when we discover it's winter. But this is the coldest. We've set some temperatures.
Yes.
With a low single-digit degrees in the first time in like 21 years. And so it is exceptionally cold, and there are people who cannot get to work, and there are people who are in danger because they can't protect themselves from the cold. But there is quite a bit of hype, is that the right word, about the cold, and that includes this new... We have to talk about the wind chill for everything. Someone said it's not the wind chill, it's the humidity. Well, but it's a little bit tiresome, but it is a huge story. And of course, the ratings in television and on the news go crazy because people turn on. Elvis explained this to me. People turn on the TV to see themselves or people like them suffering through what they're suffering through. They say, "Oh yeah, I had that problem," and so that's why the ratings go crazy, and that's why we do a lot of weather. People want to see it.
And this is the time of year when the weather person becomes stars. They all...
Yeah, the post
on 24/7.
Bob Ryan, who is retired. They this week they couldn't get enough of the guys who are doing it now, and so they ran a picture of him in their style section.
Well, weather is what we're concerned about this week. But even as we speak, Maureen McDonald, the former First Lady of Virginia, is facing sentencing by a federal judge in Richmond. Arguments or proceeding taking place even as we are speaking. Her husband, Robert McDonald, the former Virginia governor, he was convicted last year and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He has appealed that conviction. He is out while he appeals. She is facing 18 months in prison. What is your informed speculation about whether she will, in fact, receive a prison sentence?
Well, some people think the judge was pretty soft on Governor McDonald because of all the letters that were written on his behalf, because of his demonstrable history of doing good things.
That won't really
Maureen McDonald does not have. I don't think there were any letters that were submitted on her behalf. The family's torn apart. Randall Eliason, who's he teaches white-collar criminal law at George Washington University, was saying that, she was a heavy-duty player in this scandal. She wasn't a public official, though. And so I hope we get the ruling while we're on the air here. I think it's very interesting to see what happens next in this.
Especially given that the governor's defensive strategy was apparently to place most of the blame on his wife, Maureen McDonald. And as you pointed out, it has divided the family because in the wake of the conviction, one of his daughters wrote a letter to the judge saying essentially it's all her fault. She's always liked free things, and so she was the one going after that. And she, of course, has her very, very staunch defenders who say, cherchez la femme. It's always the woman who's to blame in these situations.
Well, let's say I think it's pretty well clear that both of them engaged. I mean, I don't remember the wife making the husband ride in the Ferrari with his hair blowing in the wind or flashing a Rolex. I mean, he did that. She didn't make him make phone calls to officials in the city, in the state government, to maybe pay attention to this guy who's selling this product. And so I'm just really anxious to see what the ruling is going to be, because it's an embarrassment to the state. It's an embarrassment to the governor's office, and it's a sad family matter. It's a very sad family matter. That family is in fact torn apart.
Well, neither you nor I are lawyers, even though we pretend to be lawyers on the radio, but we do have in studio a genuine attorney, so I'm going to probably ask him to weigh in on this case.
He's not going to say a word about it.
Karl Racine joins us in studio. He's Attorney General for the District of Columbia. He is a Democrat. Mr. Attorney General, welcome.
Kojo, it's a great pleasure to be here. And Tom, as always, it's nice to see you.
We are indulging in informed and sometimes not so informed speculation about the fate of former First Lady of Virginia, Maureen McDonald, who even as we speak is facing sentencing. Today she faces 18 months in prison. What is your own informed speculation about what's likely to happen?
Well, I'm going to defy Tom's guess. I'm going to talk about it.
Thank you.
My sense is that, her sentence is going to be proportionate to that which the governor was sentenced to. And of course, his sentence in the view of many was quite low. I think that Judge Spencer, who is a terrific judge, strong judge, tough judge on sentencing, clearly, had concerns about the extent of the government's case and certainly the culpability and indeed the public service and good works that the governor is engaged in his entire life, notwithstanding his obvious breach of the public trust. I think that you're probably looking at a sentence in the range of about the same amount of time. That's about as far as I'll go.
I think, weren't you on the program here and when you actually talked about the governor's sentencing, and you said, despite all these many years people were talking about, you didn't think no more than 3 or 4. If I remember your answer correctly, you can correct me, I'm sure.
Tom, I'm happy to say that I was right, but I don't think I did. I was right. I was here when we talked about the issue of guilt or innocence, what the jury would do. Right. And I actually thought that Hank Asbill, a terrific lawyer, was going to return a not guilty verdict.
Our guest, as I mentioned, is Karl Racine, Attorney General for the District of Columbia. If you have questions or comments for him, give us a call at 800-433-8850. One of the things he's going to have to deal with is the district's relationship with the Congress of the United States. Let me start off by mentioning a rather trivial matter that people like Tom Sherwood take very seriously. You can't sled on the Capitol grounds anymore all of a sudden?
Well, all those little children with their little fuzzy bob hats that they're wearing and their cute little mittens, they might be terrorists instead of Americans who are just out to sled on the Capitol grounds.
But it seems to me doing it for years with no trouble.
Remember 9/11 changed everything, including the right to sled, apparently, on the grounds of the Capitol. I don't know why, with that beautiful land up there. When I first came to town, we would walk our dog there and clean up after our dog before you call in. And but it's property, and it ought to be used. It's parkland. It ought to be used other than those once or twice concerts on those grounds there, and not allowing people to sled there. It's just kind of sad.
Well, let's move to the business at hand. Karl Racine, informed sources tell me that one Natalie Ludaway is going to be a deputy of yours in the U.S. Attorney General, she of the firm Leftwich and Ludaway. Am I correctly informed?
Oh, you have great sources, Kojo. Indeed, Natalie Ludaway will be joining our office and will be my deputy. I think it is a huge coup for the citizens of the District of Columbia. Natalie, as you know, is a longtime Washingtonian, a powerful leader of a minority law firm, the only managing partner who's an African-American woman of her firm in this city, a woman who is fierce in court, has excellent judgment, a strong negotiator, and frankly, a heart of gold, as she has committed countless hours in pro bono and public service for the citizens of the District of Columbia. It's a great day for our office.
And Leftwich and Ludaway's loss is your gain. D.C. lawmakers say that next week a voter-approved initiative to legalize the possession of marijuana will go into effect in the district, barring any intervention from the feds. But it's even less clear where the city will go from there. You recently advised the council, the D.C. Council, against holding hearings about regulating and taxing marijuana. What were the reasons for that advice, and what is your view of this whole situation?
It is confusing, Kojo, and Tom, has commented on this for a long time. The citizens of the District of Columbia deserve to have clarity in areas of law enforcement. Indeed, the Constitution requires fair notice with respect to the enactment and imposition of law, so that people understand what their conduct is and how it is they'll be punished if they cross the line. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where we don't have the exact clarity that we'd like with respect to the issue regarding the council and its attempt to hold a hearing. We looked very carefully at that at the Office of Attorney General, with a clear eye, of course, to respecting the will of the people on Initiative 71, and of course the prerogatives of the council to act responsively as they have and as they want to go out and listen and prescribe the regulations that other states have imposed on marijuana. Unfortunately, our conclusion was that, given the rider on Initiative 71 that Congress passed, the omnibus spending bill, that there were real dangers, potential exposure, if you will, if the council went forward with a traditional hearing. So we suggested and recommended an alternative approach, which the council did in fact follow.
An informal hearing called a roundtable, where essentially you have this hearing, but it's not called a hearing.
But next Thursday, the law goes into effect anyway.
Well, right, but and Council Member David Grosso and others and activists who are for home rule and for the pot legalization have said, why not at that moment challenge what is the criminal liability that some staffers and council members could be let out of the Wilson building in handcuffs for a meeting in the Democratic Forum? They think that would be a good thing to have happen. Well, what would be the repercussion?
Sure. Well, there is certainly a more than theoretical prospect of civil fines and indeed criminal sanction. The law allows for that. And so as a lawyer, when you're representing a client and the client comes to you with real questions, you have to give guidance that sometimes may appear to be conservative, but it is, informed.
Well, you certainly could have told them what the practicalities of the situation were, and then they could have decided to go ahead and have their meeting just as it were. But as to Kojo's point, next week, assuming the legislative calendar runs as we expect it to, the Mayor Bowser told me she's going to speak to the police chief, if she hasn't already, to tell her to begin enforcing the law that has passed, that people may have 2 ounces of marijuana, maximum 2 ounces, and a certain number of plants, large and small, and that not to arrest them.
Well, I think what you're seeing from our mayor, from our police chief, from Council Chair Mendelson, from Grosso, from Orange, as well, of course, from the Judiciary Chair, Kenyon McDuffie, are responsible public servants doing everything they can within their proper authority to provide the guidance that the public deserves. And in that regard, I must tell you, I'm very proud to serve with them and be a public servant in these, complex scenarios. I think they've done a tremendous job.
There's going to be a marijuana expo later this month. There's apparently going to be a seed giveaway later in the spring. What advice would you give to people who want to be ready to grow plants or smoke however they manage to obtain this marijuana?
Well, I think the best advice is to be cautious and to be careful and to be alert as to guidance that the police department and others put out with respect to the real limitations on the law. We need to get to a place, and I know the council and the mayor want to get there, and they should get there, where we're able to regulate the use, the purchase, the taxation of marijuana, just as other states like Oregon and Colorado are doing.
When the council chairman Phil Mendelson was here last week, I asked him what back conversations had there been. Had the mayor been talking to the relevant subcommittee members on the Hill, or have staffs been talking back and forth about where this might go, what might happen, what would Congress do? Has there been any back channel conversations between your office and the Hill, or with the mayor's office, about what are we going to do?
As to my office and the Hill, I can represent that I have not had any conversations with folks on the Hill with respect to the mayor and the government at large, including, of course, the police chief. We, of course, have talked and are working hard to try to bring as much clarity as we possibly can to the situation.
Well, it certainly worry for me is the ambiguity of the situation. Is even if it were quite clear that we could have marijuana in our city, it will still not be allowed on federal property. And I'll remind people that it's Logan Circle, and it's Chevy Chase Circle. It's DuPont Circle. It's the sidewalks of the Pennsylvania Avenue downtown are controlled by the U.S. Park Service. And so if you're smoking or have marijuana in your possession and you're on the sidewalk of Pennsylvania Avenue outside the Wilson Building, which is the government headquarters for the city government, you can be arrested and face a misdemeanor, $1,000 fine, a year in jail. So I just don't, where is the education for, maybe that's something for the mayor, not the attorney general, but I'm just quite worried that people are going to be arrested thinking they're doing something illegal.
Well, I completely understand the concern. It's a valid one, and you really did a good job, frankly, of outlining some of the restrictions. Rest assured that our mayor is absolutely on top of it, as is the police chief, and we're being helpful, and we will absolutely get the proper communication out.
Would you support a smoke-in up on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, I'm not here to give advice on smoke-ins.
Karl Racine is Attorney General for the District of Columbia. He joins us in studio. We're taking your calls at 800-433-8850. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream, ask a question, make a comment, shoot us an email to kojo@wamu.org. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. There seem to be some differences of opinion between you and the mayor about the city and budget autonomy. What conversations have you had with her specifically about this issue, and why you feel that a recent lawsuit filed by the council is not the way for the city to get the independence that it obviously wants?
Sure. Well, certainly, let's back up. During the campaign, I took the position that the council suit seeking to have budget autonomy was not consistent with the law. In that regard, the Office of Attorney General, led by my predecessor, Irv Nathan, represented the mayor, Mayor Gray, and the Chief Financial Officer, Jeff DeWitt. The council was the plaintiff in that action. As you'll remember, the case was heard by the Honorable Judge Emmett Sullivan. Judge Sullivan rejected.
Said, I'd really like for you to be able to do this, but you can't.
Well, that's right. Judge Sullivan, as you know, Kojo, is a lifelong Washingtonian, a strong supporter of voting rights and sovereignty. And in his 51-page opinion, it was dripping, with regret that he had to find that there was no basis in law for the Budget Autonomy Act. That is, in fact, my view, and I get there the same way the judge gets there, quite reluctantly. With respect to disagreement in interpreting the law that our office now under my leadership has with the current mayor, I think it's reasonable people can disagree. And in that regard, her legal team, led by her general counsel and and Mark Toohey of her mayor's office of legal counsel, informed me that the mayor wanted to at least inform the court that she was considering formally expressing her views to the D.C. Circuit. We did the right thing. We worked collaboratively and professionally and courteously together. And in that regard, we withdrew from representing the mayor, continue, of course, to represent Jeff DeWitt, and continue to have the position I articulated earlier.
I know Tom is going to look for clarification because for some people this is all very confusing, but allow me to digress for a second because we now have news that NBC4 is reporting that Maureen McDowell has been sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison as a result of the court case in which she was found guilty last year and in which former Governor Robert McDonnell was sentenced to 2 years in prison. NBC4 is reporting that Maureen McDonnell has been sentenced to 1 year, 1 day in prison. That, I guess, is what you're also seeing, Tom.
Yes, I'm seeing it here. The Washington Post has also put it out on Twitter.
Okay.
Sounds about right. Just, and
does that also follow Karl Racine's prediction?
He was close. He said about the same as the governor who got 2 years, but that's on appeal, right?
Yeah.
So,
Indeed. There's a legal issue.
Well, do we want to go back to?
Yes, back to the city.
the council took the position, and people voted that, well, if the Congress way back when it set up home rule, effectively authorized the spending the money, and all the money doesn't have to be approved every year by the Congress as it's been done since home rule was started. And many people think that's a very sketchy interpretation of what Congress intended. But if the mayor decides, now that she's not a council member, on the council, she agreed with their other council members that this was a good thing to do. Now, as the executive of the city, she has to at least take another look at it, which she says she'll do in 30 days, about whether the city should go forward. But if she says, I still agree with the council that this was legal, then it will be the mayor and the council as effectively suing the chief financial officer, Mr. DeWitt.
That indeed would be the posture.
I think we all need marijuana
in order to make sense of this.
Just get them all in the room and have a little toke and settle this thing.
Because it raises a number of structural problems here. If the mayor and the council are going to be suing the CFO, you are the only person who is authorized to represent the city in court. What becomes your role in this?
Well, Kojo, I thank you for the question. My role is clear and simple. My role is to look at the law, and I should tell you that I'm buttressed by several hundred lawyers who are excellent at the Office of Attorney General, who know the Constitution, know the Charter, know the appropriation rules. I follow what they tell me and their guidance. And in this case, we have a disagreement with the council and perhaps with Mayor Bowser. And in this case, therefore, if the mayor chooses to express her disagreement in court, the mayor will be entitled to have her own counsel, as she should.
We have marijuana, we have budget autonomy, we have any number of issues. We have the Congress trying to overturn some of the gun rules. Is it time, maybe 1973 was when the Home Rule Act was passed. Maybe is it time for a joint congressional city commission, task force, to get together and take a modern day look at what can be done? I mean, those of us who live in the city think we are adults. We can run our own city without the hand of Congress, but the Constitution says Congress has full legislative authority over the city. But it seems to me there needs to be some real conversation to chart a new way forward. We're going to keep having these things come up on a regular basis.
I completely agree with you, Tom, and I think Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton has fought a tremendous fight and continue to do so every day. I'm thrilled that Mayor Bowser has focused efforts specifically with respect to congressional outreach. And of course, the council stands ready to join that effort, as does the Office of Attorney General. We do need that kind of cooperative, coordinated, and forceful effort, to help advance the ball.
Maybe the President of the United States could.
Well, there is no better advocate than the President of the United States, and he has been forceful most recently, and we certainly need his support.
Well, I might disagree with you about forceful. I would say in passing, he's made some supportive remarks, but he could declare an executive commission to look at the status of the 650,000 people who live here.
Well, I think it's going to take a multifaceted approach, and certainly, Tom, you've talked about setting up a PAC.
Right.
Getting some folks to organize money
and
talks.
effort,
and really push the political process in the way that other organized advocacy groups do.
Maybe when
you
Eric
actually
Holder,
listen to Tom Sherwood.
maybe when Eric Holder is no longer the Attorney General,
allow me to go to the phones. Please put on your headphones, Tom, because Naomi in Tracy's Landing in Maryland wants to join the conversation. Naomi, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Just as I'm on the air, it's awesome. I listen to you every day. Anyway, we moved here from Colorado 4 years ago. We go back a lot. We kept our house there. And I just think that Colorado should be looked at very closely to see the repercussions of what's happening out there with the legalization, without any restriction, with the crime, the increase of crime. There are so many negative repercussions from the legalization, at least in the way that they did it out there without the regulation, that we really need to slow the horse down and really get some really reviews and studies on what's going on out there. real estate wise, it's fantastic because our property is skyrocketing. But when you see what's happening to the kids and what's happening out there right in your face, we really need to really check this out before we just say, oh, it's just pot, we can legalize it, no big deal. It's a big deal. And we should be doing a lot more background checking and seeing what's going on in the places that
Karl Racine
is legal.
Karl Racine has indicated that all of our leaders are looking at this situation very carefully. They're all concerned about it. But is there something of a dramatic nature that can be done next Thursday to make sure it doesn't get out of hand because it's unregulated?
Well, I think the best that we can do right now is to define as clearly as possible and give guidance as to what is legal and what is not, making very, very clear that we are not in a Colorado regime, not in the state of Washington regime, that the legal use of marijuana as per Initiative 71 is highly restrictive. And as to Naomi's comments, I think those are exceptional points. And indeed, those are the very points that the council properly wants to consider. And I think it's high time, respectfully, that Congress get out of the way and allow the District of Columbia, through its elected representatives here, the council, to take on those questions that Naomi raised, and do what's right and responsible for the citizens of the District of Columbia.
The whole point, David Grosso, the large council member, legislation would regulate and tax and set standards on who would sell marijuana, how it would be sold, what protections there would be, make sure minors didn't have easy access to it. All these things were going forward. That's what the Congress has stopped dead in its tracks, not the marijuana thing itself. And so this is a heavy hand of Congress, which is just spilling milk everywhere.
Earlier this month, Councilmember Mary Che asked you to examine whether the city's plans to open an all-boys public school for boys of color passes legal muster. What's the measuring stick you intend to use when you look at that? Her concern, of course, is that we might be in violation of Title IX of the Civil Rights Act because we're not doing anything similar for girls in general or girls of color in particular.
Sure. Indeed, Councilwoman Che sent a request over to have the Office of Attorney General review the propriety and legality of the, I think, daring and bold proposal that the Chancellor and Mayor have put forward and supported. Our office is conducting that review. We're not done yet, but I must tell you, I think that even under the moderate or high level strict scrutiny, there's every reason to do what government needs to do when there are problems, and that is to devote specific resources and methods that would ameliorate those problems. And here what we're talking about are core issues of education that negatively impact African-American boys and brown boys and minority men. We should be able to find a way within the Constitution to elevate the performance of those young boys without prejudicing the rights of others.
And what you're suggesting is that you're looking for a way that we can do this.
I'm confident that we'll be able to find a way to be consistent with the law.
I spoke to Mary Che this morning about this because as a white member of the council who represents Ward 3, the wealthiest part of the city, she's gotten, believes, some unfair blowback on how dare this well-to-do white woman raise this issue when the mayor's trying and the chancellor are trying to save the young African-American Latino boys in this city with this massive program that everyone seems to like. And Mary Che believes that her position has been distorted through all of that kind of criticism of her. She is simply saying that girls, if you look at the statistics, girls are increasingly fastest growing numbers who are starting to get into trouble like boys. And that girls have become invisible in this conversation. And it's wrong, she says, it's wrong to say, we've got to do something about the boys, but we'll get to the girls. She says it doesn't have to be the same, but under the law, she says, it has to be comparable. You can't just simply say we're going to save the boys and throw the girls over the side. I don't think you're saying that either, but she says if the chancellor and the mayor are going to do X for the boys, there's got to be something Y for the girls. Whether it's just something, it doesn't have to be the same, but you cannot just say we're going to leap ahead in one sex and leave the other sex behind, which has happened to girls, women so often in this country.
Councilwoman Che's question is absolutely, has been made in good faith. Councilwoman Che, as you know, is a constitutional law professor. She, in fact, wrote a law review article back in the day when VMI, the VMI case went before the Supreme Court. In that case, the question was whether women could have access to that college. So I think that the councilwoman is coming at it from a place in good faith, and we'll work with her consistent with the law to interpret the rules and provide the necessary guidance to, as I said, hopefully make this work.
So there's no indication in your mind that Mary Che has some kind of blind spot about what the city should be doing for the young people with the city?
Absolutely not. And I've met with Councilwoman Che and talked about this very point. I know exactly where she's coming from in law. And as I said, she's operating in good faith.
Running out of time, so I left the most complicated question for last. What are your concerns about the current structure of the city's legal apparatus? Janetta Rose Barris wrote recently in the Washington Post that the city is heading for a train wreck if the council does not repeal the legislation that created the Office of Legal Counsel, which took about a third of the staff that used to be yours. What do you think about that?
Well, Kojo, my position on this is clear. I ran on this issue in the campaign. I fundamentally believe that the council respectfully erred when it took out the lawyers from the Office of Attorney General and assigned them over to the agencies and created the Office of Mayor, Office of Legal Counsel. But that is the law. That's what's been done. And it's my job as the Attorney General to make sure that our lawyers are working very closely with the Office of Legal Counsel to make sure that the agencies are well represented and, in fact, that the agencies comply with the law. That's what we've been doing since day one. That's what we'll continue to do. And I think as time goes on, the council will have an opportunity in a real way to observe how this is working and make the necessary adjustments going forward.
Mark Tui is the head of the Office of Legal Counsel. I know you know one another well. You've been in this town for a while, but Tom Sherwood, what are the chances of the council revoking its decision?
I think we have to have some problem, Craig Pup, first to force them to change their position. Once we have a real conflict on what legally the city should be doing, and there's no clear leadership, then we'll have a resolution of that.
Last
but before
question.
it goes, very quickly, one of the biggest issues for consumers in this city and in this region actually is the Exelon matter of trying to merge with buy Pepco and become a huge power source. Your firm, Venable, has represented Exelon in its various operations. Have you personally been involved at all, and have you recused yourself, or do you recuse yourself from the Exelon matter?
Sure. Excellent question. Not only has my firm in the past done work for Exelon in Maryland, but a firm has worked indeed for Pepco in D.C. For that reason, I have recused myself from touching that otherwise and getting any information or opining on that merger. So I'm out of that case.
So it's somebody else in the Attorney General's office to handle that without running it through you.
I've asked Gene Adams, who, as many of you know, is one of the best lawyers in this city, to lead that effort with respect to the Exelon matter. And he knows that he has the full authority in the office to make the right decision for the citizens of the District of Columbia.
And if I could just follow up on that very quickly, you were a very successful lawyer before being elected to this position. You've had any number of clients who may have business before the city. How did the citizens know that you will use your good judgment to recuse yourself? I don't even know who all your clients are. I don't know if you've released a list or not, but how do we know when other matters come before the city that there were maybe clients you may have had personally or that your firm may have had?
Oh, sure. Well, I think that staying away from potential conflicts is critical. And where those conflicts, actual or an appearance of conflict, arise, I will absolutely recuse myself. That's part of the reason why I'm happy that we brought in Natalie Ludaway, and we have great people like Gene Adams and others to make those decisions without my input.
Well,
Karl Racine, he is Attorney General for the District of Columbia. He is a Democrat. Karl Racine, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
big week next week on
It's
marijuana.
It's the Politics Hour with Tom Sherwood. He's our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. We'll soon be joined by Jim Dinegar, President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. If you have questions or comments for him, you can go to our website, kojoshow.org, where you can watch the live video stream or shoot us an email to kojo@wamu.org or send us a tweet at Kojo Show. Tom Sherwood, they're looking at the issue of ethics in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
No, they're not.
Well, I was about to say, which you used to cover at one time, but they seem to be trying their best not to look at the issue of ethics in Virginia. Both the House and the Senate agreed with the governor, Terry McAuliffe. They imposed a $100 annual cap on gifts, but there are a lot of exceptions to that. The governor would like to create an ethics council that he would like to have subpoena and audit powers. The Senate would like to authorize random inspections of financial disclosures. The House doesn't like either of those ideas, and the impression one gets is that they are inching towards doing little or nothing.
And that's where they are. The good thing for Virginians is that 140 seats are up in the legislature this year, the 40 senators, the 100 House members. If the people of Virginia want to make this an issue of ethics, everyone thought with the charges against Governor McDonnell last year that this would propel the legislature to do something substantive.
This is a legislature that is steeped in tradition.
It's steeped in tradition, and some of the traditions aren't so pretty. So I do think that Virginia is still on the road to finding out what ethics means in elected leaders. I just wish there were more disclosure, and even in our city where we had lots of problems, if they're just disclosed, if a legislator wants to take $250 from some organization and that's publicly put on a website where his or her constituents can see it, I'm fine with them taking the $250. But there's no disclosure. There's very few limits, $100 here. There's just nothing in Virginia almost. And I don't see any movement this year. And I think we'll see more troubles. And then some years down the road, they might put in an ethics law.
And it's particularly important on this day because this is the day on which it's being reported, as we mentioned earlier, that former First Lady of Virginia, Maureen McDonald, has been sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison for the ethics violations that both she and her husband, the former governor, have been accused and convicted of committing, he having been sentenced to 2 years and having appealed that sentence. I don't think there have been any indications yet as to whether she will appeal her sentence.
I think I'm looking here on the various websites to see if she'll make that. And I don't think she spoke in court again today. Did she? I haven't seen that.
Nor did she testify in the trial.
Sure, nor she hasn't spoken at all. I guess she had a lot to say when they were getting the money.
Well, that's what the defense of the governor had to say about it, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this in the future. As I said, joining us in studio now is Jim Dinegar. He is the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Jim Dinegar, good to see you.
Great to see you both.
Speaking of gifts,
You come bearing gifts?
Girl Scout season, Girl Scout cookies. There you go, Kojo.
do we buy them online yet?
You can buy them down the block. The Girl Scouts of the Greater Washington area are headquartered down the block.
Too cold.
Which is probably where he picked them up on the way.
They
over
are
here.
cold. The box is cold.
Yes. It's hard for many people to have confidence in Metro right now, Jim Dinegar, even when you don't factor in last month's deadly accident on the Yellow Line. But you said recently that Metro can make the case to local governments, especially Virginia and Maryland, especially Maryland, so that the costs of improving service and ensuring the safety of the system are not passed down to riders by way of fare hikes. How should Metro be making that case?
Well, that accident was tragic, and there's no two ways about it, and inexcusable as it relates to the ventilation fans. But it can't be used as an excuse by the funders, the municipalities, to step back from their responsibility to fund this system. It continues to grow. The ridership is doing well. There have been dips, but partly that's because of the change at the federal government as it relates to the ridership benefits. But you now have the extension of rail out to Tyson's phase 1, soon phase 2. Candidly, you have to feed the beast, and the state of good repair has been put off for so long that it is the responsibility of the municipalities not to pass this on to be really borne by the riders. Fare increases, cutbacks in service. That's actually the incredibly wrong way to do this.
The Washington Post said the district seems to be the one most willing to step up to the plate on this, and that Maryland in particular is seen as being somewhat reluctant. And Maryland now has a governor who feels that, well, more strongly about roads, it would appear, than he feels about rails. What's the case you're going to make to Larry Hogan?
Well, I think a lot of people are applying different things to Larry Hogan, but Governor Hogan hasn't spoken yet about his position as it relates to Metro or the Purple Line. Lots of ways out there, but
he played that game all during the campaign, all during the transition, all the lead up to the. When is the governor of the state going to say something?
Well, I think when he says something, he wants to be very clear and it's going to be unmistakable. He wants to think through things like the Purple Line or funding on Metro. The district repeatedly over the years actually has led on the funding. They're just usually first out of the box, and I think they're doing well as it relates to the overall finances, so they can step up and lead on the financing. We're disappointed constantly that the federal government doesn't step up with more for Metro, or they make life more difficult. They'll underwrite parking, but they won't underwrite the expenses associated with taking public transportation.
Sometimes at some rush hours, 80% of the riders are federal employees, 700,000 in this region. But I do think people, whatever the number series of incidents that have occurred, that Metro's management needs a shakeup as much as anything. Jack Evans, a council member from Ward 2, who's now on the Metro board again, he was served there some decade or more ago. He says, WMATA stands for We Meet and Talk a Lot. And he says it's hidebound in many ways to get things done. It's $16 billion behind in the infrastructure need. It's very proud of spending $1 billion on its infrastructure, but it needs $16 billion going forward to do more stuff. And he says that we just need a dramatic change. What kind of general manager are we going to have that will do more than just, the Washington Post even said, more than the trains, but make the management work?
What kind of leader would you like to see as the next?
I'll go back a little bit. I will say that, good, no word. You don't want me running anything of that significance. I'm very happy with the Board of Trade and plenty going on with the business community, but don't let me do public transportation. When we step back and look at the legacy that Rich Charles left, it wasn't this accident. It was getting the place back to a state of good repair. Lots and lots and lots of time and money had been misspent or non-spent as it relates to the overall money on Metro, and I have to say that the escalators are going better, the trains are going better. There's
clear identification. The smoke faster.
Well, but Tom, I'll say that the business community stepped up very quickly after the entirety of the accident at Fort Totten to say that governance needed to change, that there were decision-making issues that needed to be addressed, and I think that they have been addressed. Now the leadership has got a clear path on accountability. And so when you have that accountability and a Rich Charles type, a get it done type of person, there are great strides made in terms of improvement of public safety. Not enough, and you still have to get more money because there's been a backlog. Really, it's been in a state of disrepair for so long. And I'd use that as a sample of what we've always criticized as it relates to Pepco. Well, we needed to trim the trees. We needed to do a lot of the infrastructure, and there was a lot of backlog that didn't get addressed. So I know before we go to Pepco, I want to finish up on Metro.
Sure.
We'll see what the governor of Maryland does as it relates to public transportation, but I have no indication whatsoever that he's anti-public transportation. I do think that he leans a bit more towards roads. It's a big state, all the way from Garrett County down to Ocean City. But having said that, we have confidence that the Purple Line pencils out. We have confidence that Maryland will do their share as it relates to the funding of Metro. We'll get the 8-car trains to increase from the 6-car trains to get more capacity. And as we look for a new general manager, CEO, I'm much more of let's get it done type of person in there. This is a critical time. It can't be too much planning and too much visioning and too much way out there into 20 and 30 years. You need somebody who can get things done and get them done now. It's
maybe
a critical time.
A short-term person, maybe. I always say we need a Michelle Reed type person for Metro.
We need a Michelle Reed type person.
And whether you like what she did or didn't do with the DC public schools, but addressing management, addressing the labor union issues, addressing virtually everything that's done there.
I'd be careful about going too far with a person from outside the region. You know, we take a little time to get to know the personalities and the dynamics and the three jurisdictions in the federal government. So I do have concerns and express that to the search firm. I'm not wedded to a transportation expert. It'd be nice to have, but first and foremost, I want somebody who gets things done.
Alan Liu?
Alan Liu's got a demonstrated track record of getting things done. A stadium, a convention center, our schools in the District of Columbia that were a liability are better because of his good work.
But someone like that.
A few weeks ago, we spoke to the People's Counsel for the District of Columbia about the proposed acquisition of Pepco by the energy company Exelon. She has a lot of concerns about it. When you look at this deal, face value, what would you say about whether it's good for people who live in this region or not?
I think it increases the reliability of the power in this region, and that's the big plus. Like, that's the big takeaway. If we can increase and improve the reliability, and I don't have to throw the food out of my refrigerator, and I don't have to miss work because I'm out of power, that I can increase that reliability, that's the bottom line. In addition, I do think that they've stepped up significantly, I think almost 3 times in the past couple of days, 3 times the amount, with the amount of money that's going to be put in the coffers for community support. But Exelon gets pretty well knocked around as it relates to their alternative energies. And I have to say that they move away from carbon-based energies. They're stepping in to do this merger with Pepco. Pepco has been, over the years, has been much maligned and in many respects duly needed and duly noted. But now we have the biggest player in the business coming into the greater Washington area saying, we're going to take on Pepco. We're going to make the reliability better. We're going to keep going with the undergrounding. We're going to give more money back to the community. I just actually don't quite get what's going on with the naysayers.
Naysayers said it's going to mean higher rates. It's going to undermine clean energy policies. It's going to threaten the retirement benefits of former Pepco employees.
Okay, no, and no. But that's nice that they're sort of making up their own facts. It won't raise the rates. In fact, with the efficiencies, we won't have to be buying other people to come in here when there's a big snowstorm to help us clear things out. We won't have that because we'll have the Exelon people from here to Delaware to Pennsylvania up to New Jersey. It's a huge force of people all under the umbrella of one company of Exelon. That's one. 2, on the renewables, on the non-carbon energy, on their commitment. They've actually been rated by Newsweek as the #2 green power company. So I do have to say that the facts are wrong there. And as it relates to the retirement, there's not only a moral obligation to the retirement and the pension funds, there's a legal obligation. There's nothing that can be done in a merger or an acquisition to do away with that. That's protected, and I'm sure, absolutely sure, that Exelon's got the full commitment on the pension.
Do you think that the people who are opposed to the Exelon merger don't have any good arguments that need to be better addressed other than improving the benefits fund?
I think in many respects, the people that are opposed to the Exelon Pepco merger are using this as the latest opportunity to say something that they don't want. But on its face and in the details, this deal makes great sense for the region. It strengthens the region. It increases our reliability, which has been an Achilles heel of this region as it relates to the power outages. While Pepco has gotten better, give me the best. And with Exelon, we get to have the best on the block with us. It puts us in a competitive advantage vis-a-vis the rest of the country. I want that.
What does Exelon get out of it? Does it get bigger profits?
Well, I would hope that they're in the profit-making business. They're not a charity, but it's not just that they're going after bigger profits. If you can bring efficiencies of operation, if you can bring economies of scale, if you can do that and spread your load all over a broader region instead of just pockets, it just makes abundant business sense. And I think that they see that there's real opportunity on upside because of inefficiencies, because of the lack of the economies of scale.
Maybe we can get them to run Metro.
Maybe we can get them to run Metro.
Richard,
let's see how well they do.
Put on your headphones, please, Jim Dinegar and Tom Sherwood, because here is Richard in Washington, D.C. Richard, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I want to know what Mr. Dinegar and the business community is doing to get the federal government to step up to its responsibilities, both for operating and capital budget of Metro. A little history, before Metro was formed, it was the federal government in lieu of the district, which didn't have voting rights and didn't have any rights. That was the partner originally, and then they turned it over to the district. And of course, everyone knows federal workers are the largest single user of
As
Metro.
Tom Sherwood just gave us the numbers. So why not go to the feds in the same way that you're going to the local jurisdictions?
Oh, we absolutely believe we should be going to the feds. When they did the overall match, it was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 within the jurisdictions with a complete match by the federal government. Well, that has shrunk. The federal government stepped back and did their cuts during sequestration. The big disappointment, the jurisdictions kept up at the same levels in their match. As you look now at the ridership benefits, when the federal government does that for parking, but they don't do it for the metro system, it's a real loss, and Metro's demonstrated a loss in ridership that moves them not to bikes, not to walking, but actually into their cars. And so the federal government takes a short-sighted look at two things. The increase in public transportation should be encouraged, and second, that we move the federal workforce in the greater Washington region. They actually have a fiscal and a workforce responsibility to pay their fair share and then some.
1 minute left, Tom.
You mentioned very quickly, what is the subsidy for a federal worker to park his or her car? It's like $230 a month. What is it?
Pre-tax.
Pre-tax,
Yeah,
$230. For rapid transit, it's like 130, 120.
It's been up and down, and they've toyed around with raising it, but currently it's significantly less.
I don't know, maybe we're out of time, but it seems to me Maryland, Virginia, and DC need to demonstrate in some way to the federal government. All the people who are up there now were not here when Metro was built, and they just assume it works and works badly. They don't understand their financial obligation.
I agree, and I think we can help make that case more and more now with a new Republican Senate. We had a great champion in Barbara Mikulski and a phenomenal local jurisdiction in Senator Warner and Senator Kane and Senator Cardin, but we need more of a push now with the Republicans in charge.
Jim Dinegar is the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kojo. Thanks,
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Maryland is thinking about raising the speed limit to 70 miles an hour.
It's proposed by someone who lives in Garrett County. You need to be up to 80, but it's 85 in some parts of Texas. I'm all for it. Just don't get in front of or behind me.
Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Nnamdi Show, local author Catherine Heine's early work made a splash in the world of fiction. Now her first short story collection explores the complex inner lives of women. Then at 1, Homeless in a Deep Freeze, how DC and neighboring communities fare when it comes to helping the vulnerable. The Kojo Nnamdi Show, noon till 2 Monday on WAMU 88.5 and streaming at kojoshow.org.